Healing wisdom sometimes comes from unexpected places, and that's certainly the case with our first story today. We're talking about the insights that are emerging from new ways of helping rape survivors heal. Our Inner World guide, Michele Bernhardt, has been investigating this, and Judy's with her now to find out what Michele has learned.
Sexual assaults are increasingly being seen as a major problem, even though we don't know exactly how big a problem they are, because most rapes are never reported.
Well, we do know that in the U.S. military, an estimated 95,000 service members have been sexually assaulted since 2006. In fact, a woman serving in Iraq or Afghanistan was more likely to be raped by a fellow service member than killed in the line of fire.
And on college campuses, it's estimated that 20% of women will be the target of a rapist, and research shows that every 2 minutes an American woman or man is sexually assaulted. The trauma from these attacks can scar lives for years, even decades.
Well, the good news is that new approaches are helping sexual violence survivors recover and in some cases emerge even more resilient.
What's being learned in those new approaches could help all of us deal with the difficult times in our lives.
So we're going to walk in there, and I'll just have you, I'll kind of hang back, and you can, get to know him in whatever way you want. And then we're going to put this halter on him.
Kate Weber's path to this equine therapy session has been long and painful, but ultimately transformational. It began when she joined the Army 20 years ago. She was looking forward to serving her country and becoming a nurse. Instead, she became a rape victim.
The way he flipped me around, kicked my legs apart, it was like a police officer who's trained to do that.
The attacker was Kate's immediate superior. Kate quickly reported the rape, but she was met by indifference at every turn, including at the base hospital.
And this was a grown adult male doctor who did nothing. I mean, I told him first that I was raped, and I gave him the opportunity to collect evidence. I gave him names, and then I came back a couple days later for the proof about the HIV test. And I just felt like I was just let down by every adult around me.
Kate left the Army 14 months after the rape and struggled for years with post-traumatic stress disorder and alcoholism as her weight soared from 125 pounds to 270. Then she was invited to participate in the Artemis Rising Invisible War Recovery Program. This program grew out of the acclaimed Invisible War documentary and was developed to help both men and women who'd been the victims of sexual assault in the military.
And so they come into this program and they're with their fellow, patriots, and they walk through what happened to them in a way where they're safe, where they're with very skilled, trained professionals and therapists in trauma. And then they work on different healing modalities. There's equine therapy. There's EMDR, which works with the pupils of the eyes. There's brain spotting that they do, acupuncture, acupressure, group therapy. I mean, we are not saying that we're reinventing the wheel. Some of these healing modalities have been around for centuries, but we're reframing it and we're reconstructing the program in a way that gives people a chance to try different healing modalities to see what works best for them.
It's a 2-week intensive program that runs several times a year at a retreat in Virginia.
Yeah, okay, so just feel that. Let yourself feel.
Rachel Irwin is the lead clinician at Artemis Rising Retreats and an expert on a healing eye movement technique known as EMDR. She also uses a technique called acutonics to help ground the people like Kate Weber with whom she's working.
What's really wonderful is we have time in the beginning. For the first few days, we do a lot of resourcing and stabilization and grounding work so that people are prepared to do the deeper trauma work. And then there's about a 5 or 6 day period where we really focus on the event that was their trauma.
Working through the trauma and actually really going back there, which I was dreading, but I'm so glad I did, because what I recognized was what I thought was that he completely conquered me and that I didn't do anything to protect myself and that I completely froze. And going back there, I remember now that I did fight. I fought really hard. And the reason that I fell was because I actually punched him and he pushed me. And then that was the end of the rape. This trauma program has helped me bring up the exact facts of what happened and feel comfortable with the fact that I did do so much to try to save myself and forgive myself.
Kate's progress is not unique. In fact, she and other participants in this program are part of a long-term study into what works best in treating trauma like this. Rachel says the process of healing trauma often results in life-changing transformations.
And it creates a willingness and a desire to help other people. There's not one survivor I know that when they've done their own healing doesn't want to go out and bring it to everybody else.
I've been working with Congresswoman Spear. I've been working with Senator Gillibrand. And what I try to do is let survivors know that they're not alone, and that, I give out my Twitter address and let them just contact me, because I just don't want them to feel alone anymore.
The creators of this program hope that what's learned here can help heal sexual trauma survivors all across the country. But they're already sure of one thing.
The only way that trauma can really perpetuate and thrive is if it stays in the dark. And if our culture keeps it in the dark and around silence, denial, shame, and blame. That's the only way that trauma can survive. Once those things are exposed and uncovered, and we collaborate and we support each other and we talk about it, the light is brought in, we start breathing. Not to oversimplify it, but that is the beginning of a person and our culture to heal.
For sexual assault survivors like Kate Weber, that healing process can take years and involve many different techniques.
It buckles on the other side.
Equine therapy helps survivors like Kate deal with issues such as trust, safety, and security.
And just feel and breathe.
It does feel so good.
Kate says her recovery is not yet complete.
Does that feel good, buddy?
But she is now making steady progress.
So I'm finally living life now, and it feels really great.
Kate's a great example of someone who's using her trauma as a portal for transformation, a major theme for us this season.
Well, she's also a great example of the reality that for most of us recovering from trauma, it's not a do-it-yourself project.
No, getting help from others, talking about the trauma, getting out in the open is really important. And that's a topic you and I recently explored with two experts in this field.
I recently spent some time with Dr. James Doty, clinical professor of neurosurgery at Stanford University, and a world-renowned expert in how the brain works and how it heals.
Evolutionarily, we are designed as a species in which it is absolutely critical that there is social connection and a sense that others care about us if we are to thrive.
Dr. James Gordon wholeheartedly agrees. He's a professor at the Georgetown Medical School, author of Unstuck, which is about overcoming depression without pharmaceutical drugs, and an internationally known expert in treating trauma.
I was down in New Orleans just after Katrina, and I went to one of the still functioning emergency rooms, and I was talking with a guy who was in charge of the emergency room, big, strong surgeon type. He was barking out orders and taking care of business. And I said to him something like, what do you think? Do you think we're needed down here? You got a lot of people around, a lot of mental health professionals. And he looked at me and he started crying. He said, I'll start crying too. He said, I've been through the same thing as everybody else here. He said, my house was destroyed. We're living with other people right now. I'm totally overwhelmed at home. I'm totally overwhelmed on the job. All of us need other people to come here who are not so overwhelmed to help us through this situation.
So whether you opt for group therapy or one-on-one sessions or any of the other treatment options we've discussed, the lesson here is that reaching out for help can really be important.
And another thing, even watching these stories can often activate an unresolved trauma. So if you find that you're feeling emotional, or sad, angry, or uncomfortable in any way, something may be coming up for you. Because often when we go through a traumatic experience, even a long time ago, we lose important parts of ourselves. In fact, it's those parts that have been pushed down or lost that are making the noise. The positive part of going through this process is that we get to reclaim those parts. Even though what we're going through may be horrible or overwhelming, in the end, we become whole.
And the good news is that when it comes to trauma, help is available in all kinds of ways. And we have resources for you on the Healing Quest website.
Also, later in our show, Dr. Doty will be back with some thoughts on a simple way to start our day in a way that could change our lives.
Thanks, Michele. Coming up next, our Fresh Living chef, Sarah Snow, will show us how to make a pea soup that not only tastes great, but also helps us feel better if we need a little detox.